afternoon and welcome to this panel discussion where together with our guests, leader from the industry and the higher education, we will deep dive into a discussion on how to bridge skills gaps from the classroom to the boardroom through long life learning and inclusive learning, especially when it comes to women's opportunities and roles in tech and STEM fields. My name is Elisa, Forestan-Barnes, and I am Head of Education and Skills at Abodo. I've been working in academia for about 20 years and have moved to the digital learning side and technology applied to learning, and joined Abodo recently, working on skills tech and with education institutions. First of all, I would like to introduce my lovely guest speakers and thank you all for joining us. Also, welcome to our audience. So I'm just gonna go around and introduce, we have Aislinn O'Toole, Managing Director of Jellyfish Ireland. Aislinn, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks very much. Hi, lovely to be with you all this afternoon. My role is that of Managing Director in Jellyfish in Dublin. So I set up the Irish office. I work for a company called Jellyfish. We're a global marketing business and we optimize marketing outcomes for our clients, working quite closely with tech partners, delivering agency services, consulting, Gen AI technology and training, which is obviously something I'm very passionate about. I used to be involved in delivering digital marketing and analytics training back in the day. And I've just come back from mat leave, so learning and development and upskilling is at the forefront of my mind.
Thank you, Aislinn, and welcome. We have Alecia Cotterell from, Head of Careers at Teesside University London campus.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. My role as Head of Careers at the London campus is quite multifaceted. We have three schools that we focus on, which is business, computing, and games and animation, so very relevant to a discussion on STEM. I'm responsible for an embedded employability curriculum where all students develop the skills and experiences they need to set them up for success for when they graduate, in addition to supporting students with one-to-one careers, coaching, and engaging employers for campus and curriculum careers activities.
Amazing, thank you and welcome, Alecia. And then we have Vanessa Wainwright, who is founder and CEO of Abodo.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you, Elisa. I'm the CEO of Abodo, and we are a skills technology platform dedicated to closing the skills gap. Our AI Skills Passport helps learners map their skills, explore career paths, and access personalized learning recommendations. We're very passionate about diversity and inclusion. In fact, it's a feature built within our technology. So very happy to be here to discuss more on diversity, inclusion, women in STEM.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. Before we deep dive into our discussion, I'm just going to give you a bit of an introduction and some stats about gaps in education and the labor market, especially related to gender. I would say the Women International Day, which occurred last week, always gives the opportunity to put the spotlight on gender gaps and raise awareness about different issues, such as, of course, the importance of gender inclusive skills education, which represents a springboard for women to embrace more diverse careers, especially consider, the more male-dominated STEM fields. I would like to set the scene by giving you some statistics about gender gaps, both in education and the labor market. So according to the OECD, for example, if we look at the percentage of women aged 25 to 64 who attain tertiary education, that is over 45% in general, compared to around 38% for men. But then when we start looking at the percentage of these graduates in the STEM fields, women percentage is down to 33%. If we look at women aged 16 to 24 years old who can code and program, that women only represent 10% of this, while over 30% of men have these skills. If we look, for example, the World Economic Forum, we know that STEM occupations are expected to grow significantly in the future and also represent well-remunerated jobs. In terms of women in this sector, data shows that we remain underrepresented, with just 29% of women out of the total employment across non-STEM occupation, which is a total of 49%. So that's quite significant. The trend of female STEM graduates entering STEM employment is increasing every year with every cohort, but retention of women in STEM, even 1 year after graduating, sees a significant drop. Out of 29% of women in STEM occupation, only 18% are in high managerial roles and only 12% are in C-suite roles. These are just a few of the stats. If we look at, for example, the share of women on boards of the largest publicly listed companies, that has been growing in the last 10 years, but it's still around 30%. And that is out of kind of a 49% presence of women in the labor market. And related to C-suite position in general, women represent only 25% of the total, compared to a 46% of entry level. And education inequalities have been the focus of my research for a while, and but also I feel very close to, it feels very close to my personal experience, and I'm sure it is the same for many other women, maybe the panelists as well, who put a lot of effort not only to improve, our own career, everyone's career and life, but also to make sure that more women out there will have better opportunities. Research also showed that closing the gender gap can significantly boost economic performance and drive innovation. More women should be encouraged to enter high demand fields, to increase workforce participation in general, enhance innovation, bring in diverse team into workplaces, and of course, improve business performance and stronger economic growth. So these are just a few of the reasons why we should really close the gender gap. Okay, so after this introduction, I would like to deep dive into our panel, and we'll start asking some questions around our panelists. I will start with Aislinn. What were some of the learning programs or opportunity that significantly impacted your career growth, Aislinn?
Elisa, I was giving some thought to it over the past couple of days as to what were the courses and training opportunities that I had that have impacted my career trajectory. And actually there were a couple that came at pivotal moments, such as when I studied a certificate in web technology, when I was starting out my career, trying to become a little bit more credible and have more confidence as a technical colleague in analytics. And that gave me, as I said, the confidence in what I already knew and filled some gaps as well. But it also allowed me a springboard into my next step, my next role when I was at Google. I've been very fortunate in my time in Jellyfish as well, that we have our own training offering around all digital marketing skills. So any subject matter that I was interested in, whether it be web development or social media, I had an opportunity to jump in there and scratch that itch and that curiosity. But I guess more recently, I took a course, a mini MBA in brand marketing and marketing, which enabled me to speak to CMOs essentially and customers and level up from when I was a regional director to getting that promotion to managing director. Now, it's not to say that that was the only thing. Obviously, the numbers had to speak for themselves, and the revenue was a big part of it. But it gave me the confidence to have the right conversations and to bridge the gap in my knowledge as well, and understand where a more traditional CMO might be coming from in our industry. But I think the biggest game changer for me was possibly an opportunity, actually an experience that was given to me by the former CEO and CFO of Jellyfish. When I had this idea that I'd been mulling over for ages to set up a Dublin office, they entertained the thought that a 30-something, a woman in her early 30s who hadn't done this before could actually make it happen because there was a strategic opportunity here in Dublin. And so that has been the greatest learning opportunity, in having those folks believe in me and give me the support that's needed to eventually get to where I wanted to get to.
That's great. It's interesting you say, it seems like it's a combination of you were looking for the right kind of opportunities, but also you had the support from, it seems like, all the different workplaces you have been in. Do you think that has made a difference, being encouraged as well to take training and to go forward?
Absolutely. I think encouragement and allyship makes a big difference. People who bring you into the conversation, but who also entertain these pipe dreams and go, okay, that's ridiculous, but go away, make a business plan, show me the numbers and give feedback thereon, and be open to giving coaching. So yeah, big time.
Yeah, amazing. Alecia, I wanted to ask you, so the rise of women is seen in STEM fields, we've seen an increase every year. What key strategies can educator and institution use to maintain and improve this process, you think, progress?
So I just wanted to add on to, or link to what Aislinn just mentioned, with regards to the amount of training she was able to have access to, whether that was internal within her company or externally that she could find. And I think that's a really key strategy, is that institutions, career services can embed in providing light touch points where women and girls can have an understanding or some insights into what it's like to work in STEM. So there are still quite a lot of stereotypes about, what it means to work in STEM. Are you going to be stuck in a lab for the whole day? Does it mean you have to be a nerd and wear glasses? So maybe I might fit the bill then. But actually, there are lots of opportunities that institutions can provide. So, for example, at Teesside University, London, all students and staff have access to take Microsoft and Adobe certifications. So we've got the digital skills, our creative digital skills under Adobe, and then with Microsoft, it's the Office Suite and data and cyber certifications that they can take as well. I'm also aware that the Teesside University campus in Middlesbrough is running a cyber training that is open to the public, and that's a series of workshops over several weeks where they can learn about cybersecurity, why it's important. So having those touch points, I think, is really key. The second thing I would add is the importance that, particularly within education, it's everyone's responsibility to support people in going into STEM subjects. And so that's lecturers connecting us with people that they meet in their everyday life. That's other staff. That's ensuring that everybody's on board about the importance, when it comes to allowing space within the curriculum. And that takes me on to my third point. At Teesside University London, we have a centrally delivered curriculum around employability. So students develop the type of skills that graduates are looking for. And this is cross-curricular as well, so they get to work with students across other subject areas. And all the assessments around that particular part of their modules is very practical. So things like doing presentations, developing digital portfolios, interviews as well, and these are assessed components. So students really leave their degree with the confidence, the practice and the skills, and that employer engagement they need so they can hit the ground running when they leave.
That's amazing what you're doing at Teesside. Do you see kind of a mix of female and male taking on these opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's really, really encouraging. So particularly on our cyber and data science master's courses, we do see a really healthy number of female students who are interested, and the same is reflected in the Microsoft certifications in computing and cyber as well, which is really encouraging to see. I think also setting examples as well is really important, as well as networking. So we run networking events and we encourage students to attend them as well. I often attend networking events where I meet people, and that means that I can connect students with women who are, you know, making waves in the industry.
That's amazing. I think mentorship programs are really important, especially at university level and also during your career. So that's really, really interesting. Thank you, Alecia. Vanessa, so Abodo has many significant collaborations with skills development. For skills development, sorry. Can you share key insights on how AI is shaping personalized learning experiences for women in STEM?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've discovered in the last year or two is that bias can creep in recommended learning or for working opportunities. And it might be unconscious. It could be just down to the fact that how you describe a skill, I might say Java developer, someone else describes a C++, or I might say a senior strategist in STEM, and someone else might describe it differently. And what then happens is a mismatch. And so one of the projects that we were working on last year with the European Institute of Technology was around building a global skills taxonomy exchange called Skills Bridge AI, where we could ingest multiple skills definitions and have this unified skills language. So whether you're coming from Europe, UK, America, or whether you're coming from a specific engineering industry, or you're transversing your skills from digital marketing into a more STEM-focused industry line, we're able to recognize and authenticate the skills and then guide to the next. So that's been a really, really interesting project. Another one, we have worked with a university who have amazing STEM courses, and for them, it was, I guess, the point that Alicia was raising of like, how do young women see the potential of, you know, connecting all the skills to a career, and what does that career look like? And is it the glasses or the lab coat, or is there more diversity in terms of day-to-day? And one piece of work we did was around the visualization of skills to career pathways, so that young people could really understand the skills that they have, and then what were the multiple career pathways, and of those, well, what was a typical job and average earning, and then what skills gap did they have to go and achieve that. And really interestingly, they took that visualization tool into schools, into final year 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and they've really seen an uplift in their numbers in STEM applications, simply because you kind of pull back the curtains and show them while they're still young what's ahead based on what they have and what they could acquire in learning.
That's amazing. I think, you know, part of the problem sometimes is that we don't know the opportunities that there are, so we kind of stick to what is known and what feels more safe, but of course, it shouldn't be this way. And it was interesting what you were saying about the skills taxonomy as kind of uniting different taxonomies around the world. And I was thinking how, you know, we're still different countries. There's also very different educational systems, and sometimes it's difficult to also compare different degrees. So I guess that should be the next step with skills and also education qualifications. Thank you. I'm coming back to Aislinn, and I wanted to ask you, what are the key benefits for organizations that actively invest in lifelong learning and employee upskilling?
Well, there are multiple benefits on a number of different levels, both on the individual level, on the kind of the group level and the team level, and then organizationally in terms of performance. Speaking to the individual level for a moment, obviously there's an impact on employee satisfaction and their happiness. This is something that we look at in terms of our happiness survey internally in Jellyfish. And we also look at its impact on progression. You know, how are people progressing year on year? What's going into their growth and development plans? Are they getting to the next stage in their career? And retention. You know, often one of the biggest pieces of feedback when somebody leaves a business is, you know, I wasn't growing in my role, and you know, and so retention and upskilling is very closely linked. But on the group level, we see very interesting impacts on collaboration, and I'm sure you'll have seen that in the university environment and also it's relevant in the corporate environment where you get groups working together on projects. That's a lifelong skill, but it unearths pain points that you mightn't come across working individually. So it teaches collaboration, but it also, in an organizational setting, highlights any problems with the adoption of a technology or the implementation of a process, what stakeholders are going to have challenges with this new process or technology and why, and giving them an opportunity to air their voices and concerns and feel part of this change rather than the changes happening to them, I think is really important, because that's when you start to get like your superheroes or your ninjas of a tech implementation in place in an organization that really help drive that change. As an example, when we were rolling out Slack internally as a tool, we learned from previous technology implementations in our organization, and we had champions in place who drove the adoption and made suggestions and were there on Slack channels to give features. So I think it plays such a fundamental role in change management as well as in employee retention. And then finally, when it comes to things like digital marketing, training and upskilling, has a direct impact on your campaign performance and your business results as a result. So you can see it at all levels of the organization.
That's amazing. And, this touches an important point, which is the importance of soft skills. For example, you were talking about communication and collaboration. And, I was thinking about a skill like adaptability, which is going to be so important for the future of labor market. And I think the more organization invest in upskilling and reskilling and kind of putting, focusing on the employee development, adaptability and resilience and all of that could really help them to also learn hard skills and innovation, as you were saying, related to Slack. So that's very interesting. Thank you. Alecia, can I ask you about, in terms of career services and initiatives, which ones do you think have been most effective in preparing students for success in STEM fields?
Yeah, so I would say a really key focus is starting people young. So our partnerships team does a lot of work with local schools and colleges, either running workshops, either on our campus around STEM subjects to help open their eyes around, the feasibility and, the excitement and opportunities of working in that field, as well as going into schools and doing like projects and activities. I also think that, research in this area is really important. So one of our games and animation lecturers, Zainab Gull, she's starting to do some research into why, even though there are a healthy number of women going into games courses, they focus more on the art side as opposed to the technical, so the games programming and games designing. So understanding what can be done at the early stages to help engage young people, particularly young women, in pursuing these careers. I've previously mentioned about the employability curriculum. I think that's been a real success in terms of building our students' confidence and awareness about what's needed to prepare them for the world of work. And also adding to what Aislinn had mentioned about the importance of taking people on board in terms of the changes that are happening in the sector, as opposed to sort of forcing that on them. So giving students, that ownership. So here are opportunities that you can get involved in. I also think that, and I'd touched on this previously, networks are really important. So there is someone that I met in the last, I'd say, few months called Michelle. And she runs a community for non-techies that work in tech. And she's looking to showcase extraordinary stories of people who either work in the tech space or peripheral to that. So some people may say, oh, so because I work in digital marketing, I'm not really working in STEM, when actually, you probably do know more about tech and actually involved a lot more than you think. So showcasing these stories is really important. There's also somebody else I've met in the last year called Alexandra Forsyth. She is a cybersecurity specialist and she's a consultant and works with lots of businesses. And she's recently started a podcast called Take a Chance on Me. And as part of this podcast, she interviews early careers, graduates, students, those that are interested, career pivoters in the cyber and data space. And she gives them live advice to help them with pivoting, you know, through their careers. So, you know, connecting with these really, you know, key people in the space, and I think is a really important part of ensuring that, you know, people are prepared and broadening their horizons when it comes to working in STEM.
That's really amazing, all these initiatives you're doing at Teesside. And I was thinking, when you were mentioning your work with younger students, I guess from secondary school, and I remember, you know, this is it's a very crucial time, because you don't really know what you're going to do in the future, and so it's even more important to show them, you know, what the future will mean in terms of skills, in terms of, you know, the opportunities that will be there. So that's really amazing. Thank you. Vanessa, I'm coming back to you, and I'm going to ask you, what are some best practices you think for bridging the gap between education and the industry, to ensure that, you know, students and professionals can gain real skills, real world skills?
Really, I think the crux of it is they need to get together. They need to form really strong partnerships. I think there's a lot of micro partnerships happening, but there's so much intelligence that sits with industry that education can really benefit from. One inspiration we've had, having worked with a number of universities, is the same type of project or ask was coming up again and again. They felt the gap with industry was widening. You know, maybe takes 2 years to create curriculum and roll it out, but industry is moving so fast now. How can they perhaps use micro-credentials to fill that gap and make sure that students and graduates and lifelong learners have the maximum employability? So industry-aligned curriculum is key. And to have that skilled lens, being able to see within industry, what do they need across the different departments, different domains, and digital and green skills. I think for the individual, though, I'm doing a sort of a coaching session with someone, a friend of a friend, who really, they're in their 20s, they have a great graduate or a great degree, little unsure about the exact path, but on looking through her eyes as to the world that is today, when, you know, 20 years back, when I worked in sort of training, development and recruitment, it has changed so much. It's a very stressful environment. And I think what we need to do with all the powers of like skills, taxonomies and AI and passports or CVs is to be able to guide them, to really be able to help young and old understand the skills gaps that they have. And rather than serving up thousands of courses or, you know, degrees that have some elements that are relevant to industry, really, we can now with technology serve up personalized learning and development. That's what we have within the passport. And not just course completion, but actually when someone finishes a course, they should, with the very least on their CV, but ideally within a digital footprint, have the skills they've acquired, and not just the hard skills, but the soft skills. By having all of that information in terms of like a digital badging for the micro-credentials, it really will guide people to not just do learning once, but continue through their life, and hopefully ensure that they always have the opportunity to work, no matter what age they are or what their circumstance is.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, you're absolutely right. During my 20 plus years in university, I have sat through many course revalidations, and that takes 3 to 5 years. I'm sure Alecia will also agree, or will have insights in that, and how, every time as a lecturer as well, I got feedback from students. One of the main points was always, this course was too theoretical. There's no practical things. I don't feel like I've learned proper skills to get into the job market tomorrow. So absolutely, we need to do more about that. Thank you. So I'm going back to Aislinn. Can I ask you, how do companies measure the return on investment of their skill development initiatives, and what metrics do they use to track that?
Yeah, sure. So I think some of what I touched on already is relevant in terms of tracking employee happiness, retention, and progression. And indeed, to some extent, you can track networks within teams and collaboration, and how many new points of contact are they working with, and how more seamlessly are projects getting done. But I guess taking a step back to how we manage it within Jellyfish training for a bit, we don't just look at competence in skills and assess that, but we look at confidence in key skills as well. Like, where would that individual rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 5 before and after the training that they've taken in terms of key role related competencies that are deemed to be necessary to fulfill that role to excellence. So we look at before and after, sometimes with a little bit of a discovery session, roundtables and stuff like that beforehand, to really understand from the hiring manager or from the existing team manager where the team is at and where they need to get to. So I think that's a big part of it. Also, as I said, we're very fortunate that in our training, we are an agency, so we give very practical assessments in our trainings in terms of, this is something that you would do on the job, this is going to be your exercise to complete the course, and we can assess the ability to do that as well. So I would say, 1 to 5 in role related tasks is a big thing, getting people to assess their confidence. And for me, in the previous courses that I took as well, that was my biggest takeaway. Yes, I bridged the gap and connected theories to understanding and theories to my experience, but I also had more confidence in what I knew, and that's a big part of it too. So and then finally, I would say belonging as well, in terms of employee retention. Like, do they feel like they belong in this organization, they're being invested in? Harking back to some of the topics we've already talked about allyship and networks and mentoring, is all of that happening, as well as the formal skills training, to make sure that an individual is learning both in theory and in practice, and getting that shadowing or senior experience that requires somebody spending some time with them. So I think that would be it in a nutshell. But in terms of the measurement, it would be retention, belonging, and then role related tasks.
Yeah. So would you say, you mentioned it's a kind of a self-assessment in terms of what you feel you have learned and your confidence before the training and after?
Yes, it would be. It can also be conducted by hiring managers as well, in terms of their outlook, or team leads in terms of their outlook on the team skills. But ideally, it should be the individual self-assessing.
It's interesting because it's kind of the individual need to take responsibility for his own development. So it's very interesting. I just wonder how kind of honest people are with themselves sometimes. But in this case, I guess, it is about confidence, as you said. So
well, it's assessed in coordination with the competence, right? In terms of, are they able to actually deliver the role-related task as part of the exercise?
Okay.
But I think confidence is a key part in us putting ourselves forward and looking for those stretch opportunities.
That's true.
That gives us the career growth opportunities. So if we don't have the confidence, we might not pipe up and use those skills. And if we don't use them, we'll lose them. That's
true. I think sometimes it's where women are a bit lacking compared to men, especially in certain fields. Thank you. Alecia, can I ask you, how can educators integrate microlearning into STEM programs to provide more flexible and accessible learning pathways?
So, as mentioned, at the London campus for Teesside, all students and staff have access to Microsoft and Adobe certifications, so they can take this alongside their course, and they're specialised in a range of areas, particularly focused on STEM. So it's a self-learning pathway as well, so it gives them that flexibility. We also are part of the AWS, the Amazon Web Services, so that also means that students can take certifications, again, alongside their degree. So what we're trying to do is align particular module areas with these certifications, and encouraging students to take them alongside the module they do. So, for example, with AWS, there's a module on cloud computing. So when they're looking at that within their module, the data science and cybersecurity students, they're encouraged to then take on the AWS module as well, to help formalize and add more specificities and industry, facing credentials alongside their degree. We've spoken a lot today about the importance of skills, and just touching on what Vanessa said about how there's lots of courses out there. There's lots of them now more than ever. No matter your background, there are so many opportunities out there. All you need is an internet connection. You could go, Costa Coffee, you can get Wi-Fi for free, couldn't you? And go on the internet, and there's so much out there. But actually, I think a key thing that, that we've not touched on is actually that onboarding of students and people, whether they're pivoting in their career, because they're later on in life, or, in the early years, about the importance of these skills and how pivotal they are. And actually, a lot of my work is repetition. It's, regularly raising awareness. It's doing lecture shout outs. It's having lots of guest speakers in. It's constantly speaking to students over and over again, until that hits. And actually, as a campus, we've only been open for 18 months. And it's only now, after we've had our first iteration of students, that's when I'm starting to hear them say, oh, I understand why that employability component was so important now. And, it's really helped with my confidence with interviews, like I get it. But very often in that moment, they don't get it. So actually it's about having, being persistent with those conversations. Another really important aspect is having a really lively curriculum. So in October, we approached a cybersecurity consultancy called Waterstones to see whether they would set a cybersecurity challenge for our data and cyber master students. It was a really great activity that we did. So the consultancy set up an online platform that had issues with its vulnerability, and students had to work in teams to understand what the issues were. And they presented it to a panel of industry experts. Now, again, while this was supplementary to their module, it was a great way of learning, applying the theory that they're looking at within their module with practice and engaging in industry as well. So actually embedding those practical opportunities and industry connections makes a really, really big impact.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, as I was saying before, students really want the practical side of learning. And this is, where sometimes education fails to, kind of connect education with the labor market. So you're doing really amazing things. Thank you, Alecia. Vanessa, I'm coming back to you. I wanted to ask you what strategies can help remove biases in how skills are assessed, ensuring that diverse talents have equal access to opportunities.
Yeah, this is something that we've worked on for a very long time. I think there's just always bias in sort of skills assessment and recommending a candidate for a role or, for a promotion. And I think it starts with that skills first approach. Like if we can ensure education or communicating with industry and we're using that one skills language, we're automatically going to create a fairer playing field. I think Aislinn raised a really good point around confidence, and even with Elisa talking about these practical work experiences. They're both really important soft or human skills, but if I think about how we hire and promote people, we're looking at a CV or maybe a AI tracking system of how they're working or performing. Whereas we should really be recognizing and authenticating skills acquisition and, encouraging that it doesn't just have to happen in the workplace. And it's not just through formal education. There's other ways of acquiring skills, whether it's sports or charity work. And I think being able to get that footprint, digital or non-digital, to recognize, authenticate, and then be able to promote or hire based on that. So one of the elements of the skills passport, we have anonymized skills matching, which takes a little while for maybe a recruiter or company to get used to. Traditionally, recruiters might get 100 applications and unconsciously screen the names where someone's from, you know, whereas this is skills first matching. And it means that the match is purely happening around the skills that they have and maybe the gap that exists or doesn't exist. If the bias is going to kick in, it'll kick in later. I think the more we can do for that, as well as making it very accessible to access training and learning, and that it's a real, it's recognized and rewarded for people that really proactively go and achieve it. I think that's when we'll see a real shift. And look, I'm a mom of three kids, and I know that like everything changes when you become a parent, and that you've a lot of responsibilities in life, and I think the more that we can think about lifelong learning in that context of like, well, should we have more courses that are digital rather than on site, and so on, and how can they be recognized? And to the ladies' points of like, can we have more practical element, even if it's remote, so that you can do it while working, while being a parent as well, will make a huge difference. And my last point, I know many points on this, I think a lot of women, not just at the early stage of early 20s, are interested in STEM. And if we can show how skills can be transferable in, we might see people bringing industry experience and moving into STEM, if we can just show them the pathways.
Absolutely, thank you. I know we're a bit tight on time, but yeah, that's really amazing insights from all our panelists. Thank you. I'm going to ask you one last question very quickly. And that is, so if you could give your younger self one STEM superpower to help navigate lifelong learning and career growth, what would it be, and how you would use it? So I am gonna start myself, and I think I would tell, I mean, it's not focused on STEM per se, but I would tell my younger self to keep trying and failing, because failing teaches you how to succeed better at things, that being learning maths or going for the job you want in the sector you want. So I'm going to ask Aislinn, what is your STEM superpower for your younger self?
Thanks, Elisa. Yeah, not directly related to STEM, but generally useful is just strategic decisioning in terms of what I give my time to, and making sure, in the theme of today's conversation, that I allow time for my own upskilling, you know, stop doing the busy work for a minute to take a step above and look at where we're trying to get to, both for myself and for the organization. And also making sure that I'm mindful of, if I'm working on something, is it appreciated by the organization? Because we as women often take on roles and responsibilities in an organization too that is not always thanked, but is for the greater good. And not to say that we shouldn't do that, but you know, balance that with our own needs too.
Absolutely. Alecia, what about you?
I love that question, by the way. My superpower, STEM superpower, would be consistency. So I'll make this 10 seconds. When I was a little girl, I got a VTech laptop from my mum and my godmother, and you could type on it, and you know, so this was back in the 90s, all sorts. And there was some coding that you could do on it. And I remember starting to have a go at it, and then I got bored and left it. And I just wish I had been more consistent. Obviously, I was only a kid at the time, but actually, who knows, you know, what area of STEM I would have ended up in if I just stayed consistent. So I think that kind of ties into what you mentioned as well, Elisa, about, you know, just trying and keep going and failing. But I think consistency is really powerful because it tends to win in the end.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Vanessa?
It's kind of double-barreled. One would be brave. And, you know, when you're feeling uncomfortable, that's the time that you need to be really brave. And then also, if you are able to think into the future, the position that you would like to have, reach out to someone who's doing it and see if she or he will just be a mentor, or at least get on a call and kind of give you some guidance, because that can save you years in making mistakes and unnecessary paths that you take by just hearing how to get there and actually work out, is it where you want to be? And again, when it comes to that reach out, just be brave, because the worst they can do is say no. But I think most of the time people want to give back.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much.